Hello. Are there areas in Bristol which inspire higher levels of economic productivity than others? Although we were initially prompted to look into the creativity within Bristol, as the city is such a melting pot of innovation, we found that creativity can't be quantified or measured. It's really subjective and much more qualitative. We were also conscious as a group we didn't have the scope to complete this type of research, and this led us down a rabbit hole about economic productivity.
We chose to investigate economic productivity as it was a topic with a more suitable breadth for our presentation and is quantitative. Our group decided that if research was going to be done in Bristol to assess whether or not economic productivity varies within the city, the two wards would be the most suitable locations to investigate into. This graph highlights that across Bristol, there are varying levels of deprivation. Specifically, the wards of Clifton and Ashley have contrasting levels of deprivation, as the varying colours across the choropreth map suggests. This inquiry is relevant and an important investigation in today's world in order to highlight the economic inequalities that reside within Bristol.
We would like to visit Bristol and whilst there carry out fieldwork. For the purposes of this presentation, I'm discussing fieldwork methods in a non-COVID time. We do realise it's currently inappropriate and unsafe to carry out some forms of data collection. We have considered our primary data collection methods and considered that these would be the most appropriate in order to portray a suitable assessment of the areas involved, furthering our understanding. We will add benefit for other researchers and contribute to the total research knowledge of the geography community, as commented upon by Neil in 1999. Initially, we would assess the housing and infrastructure quality in the area, as we know this is a good indication of relative economic prosperity and productivity. We have considered the different methods available to us and concluded that this is the most appropriate method. We will carry out the fieldwork along a prominent street in each ward, and the street would be chosen to be as representative as possible of the ward. It can then act as a transact, providing a sample we can scale up and upon which we can base a view of the whole ward. So our methods are as follows. Firstly, to survey houses along street transects in each ward, we'd carry out assessments such as building height and environmental quality assessments on this street. We would also walk around the street taking photographs in order to build up a bank of photographic evidence to inform a qualitative assessment. We would also use questionnaires to gather personal opinions on the area from local residents or people passing through. This is important as we could then obtain views from many different people with varying stakeholder thoughts. We would also ask residents if they were happy to take part in an interview or focus group. This would provide a personal view of the area, and as the residents will certainly know the area better than we do, it may suggest new lines of inquiry. We feel this would be an appropriate method of gathering primary data.
Along with our primary data, we'd also like to investigate secondary data to support our line of inquiry. This includes looking at academic literature, which will provide the evidence to why secondary and primary data is relevant and useful. Bristol City ward profiles, council documents, censuses, and DataShine will all help to compare the two wards and illustrate their differences. The use of rateable values over average housing prices is important because it uses the average value of the land by area, whereas the average housing prices does not. This would mean that if the houses happen to be bigger in one place over another, it would not affect the rateable value of land. The theory behind this is that having a more expensive rateable value would indicate better land use quality and therefore more sought after and more expensive. Importantly, we'd also like to use 2 case studies within the wards to exemplify our secondary data.
Following on from what Isla mentioned, one possible research method our group stumbled into on our rabbit hole was the possibility of using 2 specific workplaces in Bristol, such as Hamilton House and Desk Lodge, as case studies of primary data collection sites that indicate that there are areas in Bristol which inspire higher levels of economic productivity than others. Hamilton House and Desk Lodge are 2 flexible working environments, yet despite them both having the same general function, they are slightly different. On this slide, I have included a review of each location, which helps, as you read through them both, to give an indication of what each co-working space is like. Hamilton House is seen to be an independent community hub that radiates creativity into its surroundings. However, Desk Lodge is perhaps more of a formal, business-minded and isolated environment. We would use these two locations as microcosms of workplaces in Bristol to conduct an experiment to determine whether or not economic productivity varies across the city. Our experiment would involve each member of our group booking to spend a set amount of time working in each place. We would then monitor each person's productivity by measuring their output divided by their input for the time they spent in each of the locations. This process will be a qualitative survey, as each person would have slightly different observations and results from the review. Yet the experiment would be worthwhile, as it would give us a deeper understanding of the kinds of workplaces there are in Bristol. The experiment would also indicate that workplaces across the city do inspire differing levels of economic productivity. And from these findings, it would be possible to hypothesize that there are in fact areas of Bristol which inspire more economic productivity than others.
We use a reading by Philip Hauser to find indicators of economic development. This illustrated that statistics relating to employment, education, and size and composition of the labour force could all be used as direct measurements. Although data such as GDP would be more accurate, this would be harder to find on a local scale. Using the data chooser, we can investigate these indicators through unemployment rates, full-time students, and occupation. By hovering the mouse over our two wards and even the postcodes of the case studies, the key would produce percentages. By comparing the two places, we can investigate the differences, if any, indicating levels of economic activity. If there are any local anomalies within the wards, we could also investigate those further. A reading by Penny Roberts suggests that social class is indicative of factors of wealth, occupation, and education. So we use this information and found these pie charts showing social grade. With society divided into this hierarchical system, class structure shows that positions like AB, as seen in the pie chart, are better paid than positions like DE. We can use these two graphs to compare percentage differences in classes to demonstrate economic prosperity.
To further explore possible disparities between the two wards, employment data from the two areas can be illustrative of their respective economic productivity. As depicted in these pie charts, employment status of residents in the corresponding wards can provide us with valuable information relating to their economic productivity. Regions with high unemployment are synonymous with lower rates of economic productivity, an indicator that has long been used by city councils and government policymakers alike. However, as Cynthia Fletcher accurately notes, whilst demographic accounts yield precise decompositions of data that can be used to infer economic productivity and the like, demographic data is also shallow in its appreciation of cause and consequence, two factors that must be accounted for within our research. Thus, we may wish to turn to academic writings to answer questions surrounding cause and consequence of economic productivity in the two wards. Joseph W. Hampson's detailed account of a community economy within Stokes Croft region of Ashley is perhaps as good a place to start as any, with his account providing important contextual background to Stokes Croft economy and attempts being made to regenerate the historically underdeveloped region of Bristol's city centre. By turning our attention to reviewing academic literature, we can create a contextually informed answer to our research question. Whilst academic literature cannot be the sole method of data collection, it is important to note its value as source material that we can access during our proposed project and to further our line of inquiry into variations of economic productivity across Bristol. In conclusion, our line of inquiry into the economic productivity of Bristol as a post-industrial city has led us to research two separate wards and two specific workspaces within these wards. Our research has made the case that there are inequalities surrounding the city and its economic productivity, with discrepancies being evident between the wards. The research methods we proposed in the presentation can be used to assess where economic inequalities lie within the city, whilst also confirming that there are indeed areas within Bristol which inspire higher levels of economic productivity than others. This research task will provide valuable information that can be utilised by different actors, both in and out of the geographical field, in attempts to address and solve development gaps within the city of Bristol.